Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by robotic process automation pioneer Blue Prism. Digital transformation has the potential to reshape the way companies service their customers, engage their employees, and manage their operations. Whether you're looking to develop strategies, tactics, and best practices to positively impact the future of work, or you're curious to learn how other companies have successfully navigated their digital transformation programs, then this podcast is for you. We're here to help you transform now.
So welcome everyone to the podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy McKinley from the Blue Prism Financial Services team. In this edition, we'll be discussing the findings from the independent research we commissioned earlier this year, which questioned 550 senior managers from leading financial institutions across Europe, Americas, and Asia Pacific. We wanted not only to examine how financial services companies are adopting intelligent automation, but also to look more broadly and understand how work models themselves are changing in the sector, and indeed how the sector itself is likely to change in the coming years. The survey is published in 3 installments, and the first is already waiting for you to download. With me to discuss the findings of the survey, we have Jovana and Ian from the customer office, 2 people who spend their waking hours helping Blue Prism customers reap the benefit from adopting intelligent automation and providing them with a roadmap to build automation out across their enterprise. Jovana, can I start with you? Would you like just to tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Blue Prism?
Hi, Jeremy. Yeah, nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm a customer success director at Blue Prism Asia Pacific, and I am focused on the future of work through intelligent automation and AI. So my job is really to help our enterprise customers to build and grow their digital workforce, and more importantly, to maximize the value they get out of their automation investments. In terms of my background, I've got experience in business transformation and tech innovation, and over the past decade or so, I worked at both corporate and startup environments, helping companies to drive change and to scale effectively. On a personal front, I'm also very geeky and passionate about new technologies, especially if they can solve important problems and, well, hopefully drive positive social impact, which I strongly believe Blue Prism is well set to do.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. And Ian, if you could do the same.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Ian Hardy. I'm also a customer success director. I'm based out of Europe, and Jovana explained perfectly what the role of a customer success director is to do. I really want to as well add some insight to my customers from real working practices. My background, I worked for a global bank for 25 years before joining Blue Prism. Variety of different roles, from customer facing, operations, change, transformation, and also their automation teams, both in the UK and worldwide.
Smashing, thank you. So one of the first things the survey highlights is how people have been used historically as, if you like, the glue to get non-interoperable systems and processes working together. I think, we're particularly aware of that when we call contact centers and we hear the operatives trying to find a way around these fragmented systems and processes, trying to get things working and to serve us properly. And specifically looking at the survey, it said 78% of respondents highlighted the importance of automation for re-entering data, and 76% highlighted using automation to check customer data. So to Jovana first, do you think it's fair to characterize historically people being used as this kind of glue to get things moving, if you like? And if you do think it's fair, how do you work with customers to change that?
Definitely. This is something we traditionally see across the board in all industries that are built on complex process architectures, and also the ones that have been evolving their operations and technology stack over the decades. As business and regulatory requirements got more complicated and the change cycle got faster, we're really seeing especially financial service institutions addressing these challenges by just deploying more people to undertake this additional work. And they often do this by using old and non-interoperable technologies. So essentially, humans, as you said, are used to patch these gaps between systems and processes and that is, I'm sure we can all agree on, waste of human potential and ingenuity. So one obvious effect was the bloating number of jobs dedicated to these non-value adding activities. I would argue that in times of such cost pressure, competitiveness, and market volatility, companies really need every single employee to work on creating value for the customer, directly or indirectly. So not surprisingly, on the back of that, this approach of really throwing humans onto problems has also introduced pretty high levels of employee dissatisfaction and attrition. But we also see manual handoffs, bottlenecks, numerous data inaccuracies, which really all contributes to lower quality of work and slower business responsiveness. So from our end, it's just, we always, when we talk to a customer, we say, can you just imagine if you could free up at least part of that human potential that you have by offloading some of this automatable work to our digital workforce? Well, that would mean that really unique human skills that they have can then be redirected to impact making activities such as research and analysis, innovation, and customer excellence. And all of that is something that can drive real change by improving employee satisfaction, number one, but also generating better business outcomes.
Thank you. And I guess just one of the questions is, are you kind of saying that we're saying, well, the people stop being the glue and intelligent automation replaces that as the glue? I mean, that's kind of one of the more controversial things in the industry. But how do you see the role of intelligent automation as part of that solution?
So Ian, do you want to take that, or should I continue?
Yeah, no, I'll take that, Jovana. And I think you've made some really good points, Jeremy. Just before I move on to the second point, I think the first around the humans patching into those into that tech stack, I think that's been exasperated rather by within financial services by a lot of takeovers and mergers over the years, and also the pivot into the onshore and the offshore model, which has created a lot of siloed working and created almost a lack of visibility of some end-to-end processes. I think when it comes to the humans and the digital workers becoming then the glue, I don't think it's a complete pivot to a digital worker, if I'm being totally honest. I think there will be a need for humans to still remain as part of that glue, and looking at where the expertise lies between the digital worker and the human, so that you create an ecosystem that will create something greater than the sum of its parts. I think we need to work together, not just replace. I think the human glue as we move forward will be more around the driving alignment, coordinating people and effort, coaching and developing and visualizing and strategizing, and also understanding, and this is an area where I feel often overlooked when it comes to automation, but the change in the process and the glue being around understanding what the impact of that change in the process will be, and not pointing a finger at a digital worker for breaking down. As we evolve in intelligent automation, some of those roles and some of those skills will probably be picked up within the ML and the AI space. But I do still believe there will be a need to augment with the human workforce as well.
Mm-hmm. And Ian, you spent 25 years in the financial services industry. Speaking as someone who's worked as an employee, how does that impact the working culture? Do you think of people in those roles? As you said, it could be distributed across different locations. People might be doing compliance in India. There may be call centers, accessing different systems and having to rekey and retype. Well, is it affecting performance? Is it affecting attrition, career growth? Do you think financial services is still an attractive sector? What's your take on how that impacts the culture of the industry?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I think from my personal experiences, touched on in the introduction, I've worked in a variety of different roles. I think one of the biggest changes for me was when I went from working in the branch network into our operations centers, and it was like working for a totally different company. Although it was the same company, it had the same vision, it had the same culture, the lack of understanding for me of what was done in an operations space was staggering, and took quite some getting used to. And I think that's the danger that we have in financial services. By creating these different silos at times, we really put the emphasis on being able to work together and to collaborate as global teams and in a seamless way. As we fragment these processes, whether that be globally or across technology stack and get automation to do it, if we lose that visibility, we lose the ability to connect both as employees and ultimately to fulfill customer requests.
Thank you. That's really useful. It's very insightful. Thank you. So that's the first thing then. So the second thing that the research highlighted, which we thought was interesting, was the increase in the speed of uptake of automation during the pandemic. So in geographies like the Nordics and the Middle East, around 76% of respondents indicated a significant increase in the use of automation in the last 12 months. And only around 6% indicated they had no plans to change their ways of working. So to Jovana first, if I can, do you think there's a direct link between the pandemic and the increased adoption of intelligent automation? Or do you kind of feel they were on this road anyway?
Great point, Jeremy. Yes, COVID crisis has really been a game changer for technology adoption in general. The biggest gains that have been made in remote work infrastructure, cloud, and of course, process automation. We basically have decades of nudging customers with a very slow uptake, converging into 1 year where everyone simply had to do it. It was not a matter of business transformation agenda or securing budgets anymore. It was now just a matter of business survival, really. So us as a Blue Prism, we also reacted really fast, and very early on, back when pandemic was just starting, we established our own COVID-19 relief program, which was essentially offering our technology and expertise to those who were in the most pressing need. Think frontline businesses like healthcare and governments, but also financial institutions, energy providers, transportation players, and really many other industries who needed to adapt fast to ensure continuity of vital consumer services. So let me give you an example. One of our prominent clients in banking sector acted as most banks did at the time, and they quickly introduced new policies designed to alleviate some of the financial stress from its customers. So to assist customers in accessing loan reliefs, the bank offered an option to apply for assistance through its mobile app. Processing these applications quickly was critical to ensure prompt repayments and regulatory compliance. At the beginning, the staff was working 7 days a week to clear this backlog, but then with the tens of thousands of applications to process, this simply wasn't doable. They needed something faster, they needed a smarter option. And this is where, when they turned to intelligent automation, by deploying additional digital workers that we provided to them to clear that backlog. So the solution was designed and deployed within a week, and shortly after processed over 100,000 applications, and had taken significant pressure off of its employees. But most importantly, they responded in an efficient and timely way, giving customers a peace of mind when they needed it the most. Internally, this success case served to provide visibility and to strengthen confidence in automation program across their enterprise. It was a perfect example of what digital workforce can achieve in action, enabling the bank to be fast and adaptable and nimble when it truly matters. Their automation unit managed to use this win to secure additional budget for their automation program. And all of that in the middle of pandemic when all non-essential spending was put on hold. So this is definitely one of the showcases where we saw that pandemic was accelerating things in a good way.
Yeah, no, that's a really good example. Thank you for that. And I guess, Ian, I'd ask you the same question, but perhaps as a challenge. I've read a few posts recently suggesting that where automation has been adopted, in haste, if you like, for immediate needs, things like mortgage holidays and loans springing to mind. Some companies may have to go and kind of unpick some of that work and build automations for a longer term, strategic or transformational view. And so, what they did quickly and they it spun up in a couple of days or a couple of weeks, they may go back and do it differently. So I just kind of like, from your customers, and just wonder what your experience of that is.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. And I think that the huge positive here is that the pandemic has really shown companies what can be done, and that real mindset change from should we be doing this, can we be doing this, to we have to do this and we have to find a way of making it work. And it's proved what's possible. It's really taking the negativity out of the mindset. For me, I'm not seeing customers unpicking what they're doing at this moment in time. We are still in a global pandemic, one that we do have light at the end of the tunnel, and hopefully we will get there sooner rather than later. But I'm not seeing customers unpicking it. If they do unpick, to redistribute, to relook at what they want to achieve at the end of it, I don't see that as being an issue. Learning from what was done and looking at ways of improving it, because by implementing automations that you do know that you'll throw away, if the benefit is there, it's still worth doing. It doesn't have to be for a long time. We had numerous examples in my previous role where we looked in our initial toll gates at whether this was going to be a long-term solution or one for 18 months. And as long as the return on investment was there, which was our driver, then we went into it with our eyes wide open and we proceeded. It's the right thing to do.
So it's kind of like two things, I guess. One is that if it has a lifespan for the use of the digital worker or digital workforce, that's fine, accept that. And secondly, key learnings from doing something quickly rather than spending months thinking about what you could do. Okay.
Absolutely, Jeremy. I also think as well, you've got what automation has proved in this pandemic is business resilience, and no company is going to want to go into a different pandemic. Speak to the scientists. There will be more pandemics down the road. So you want to make sure that you create that business resilience and you create those solutions that mean that you can pivot quite quickly. So learn from what's happened in this occasion and make sure that we're in a better position when the next pandemic hits. And that's not meant to be negative, Jeremy, but make sure that we plan for it.
Yeah. And I guess you're reducing the kind of operational risk that you have by having, that we always thought the global delivery model was, the safest form of risk that you could possibly have in terms of reducing risk. But actually, automation is probably more operationally secure because you've got all your digital workers sitting under your own bonnet, and you have full control over them.
Yeah, absolutely, Jeremy. And I think that's certainly something that, Jovana, I'm not sure if you agree, but the ability for the digital worker to be able to swarm to where the business volumes and the business criticality is needed is absolutely something that that customers aren't always there yet, but we need to be pivoting towards to be able to look at true business agility and pivot those digital workers where they're needed.
Gotcha.
I think it's also a little bit about the change of mindset, right? So if we zoom out at the whole story, the actual example I gave, I think the learning is really almost like a rebranding, right? To focus from like, this is the automation onto an actual problem solving framework. And I think that makes a big difference in people's mind. So basically saying that by solving really important and immediate problems, these automation teams can gain more trust within their own organization, because they're no longer seen as a department whose job is to come in to automate everyone else's job, but rather to find problems people encounter and help them to solve them. And I think this is what this pandemic period can also show to us.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay. And I guess the other related question is, you know, if you're a customer who's already embraced automation as a strategic tool and you're using it across your business, that's one thing. You know, but for companies that almost like stumbled over automation in 2020, you know, how do they go about taking it from something that quite probably sits within a silo of their business into something that is, you know, more enterprise grade? And I was listening to a really good podcast actually from this series from a gentleman from Bain, and he made the point that, you know, centers of excellence aren't always the best evangelists within an organization because it's not always their function and what they do and their skill set. So, you know, the question I guess maybe Jovana to think about is, you know, who needs to take it from the silos out into the enterprise? I mean, do you think obviously the COE does have a role, but what's your take on that? How it, you know, when you speak to customers, what do you advise them?
So I think what people tend to forget is only partially about technology, and it is a lot about the change. And this is really where we see the biggest work that needs to be done. And so I've had personally a couple of customers who were in exactly that position that you were just explaining. So just starting their automation journey, they were really early on in the beginning of 2020, and they really, as we mentioned before, they used the opportunity to showcase the value, to showcase that this is a technology they can actually get the business solution really fast and in a good manner. And then from there, they really use those to position themselves, to first of all win the trust, to make sure that business understands that this is something that is secure and compliant and they can work with it. But then at the same time, that this is something that can bring them value and that really fast. Mm-hmm. So from there, it's really all about communication. Communicating in a smart way also does not just mean communicating the result of that one showcase. It also means, as we normally say, having that big vision, thinking big and moving fast. So really understanding what automation can do at a large scale in someone's organization, but then really being pragmatic and moving fast on the right opportunities, right? Choosing opportunities that are highly impactful and they're touching across different strategic objectives of a company. So if those two things are in place, I think what we see is normally that COE champions are really good at getting where they want to go and positioning themselves within the broader stakeholders network. Another thing is always encouraging your change agents meaning really CEOs and senior business executives who can help a lot by just evangelizing this program, and they're the ones who can drive the alignment between people, processes, but also digital workers. And that helps a lot just to remove the fear and to power charge in a way the adoption. And then from bottom up perspective, where we know that works is just making sure that CE teams really build champions at all levels, so that they embrace their insiders and they really take them on a journey. And if that is in place, then they can be sure that they're in a right position to democratize technology as they move along.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Ian, any observations on that? Any other further comments?
Yeah, I think Jovana has nailed it. And dare I say, Jeremy, there's a shameless plug here for the ROM, the robotic operating model that Blue Prism has built and endorsed. And because this is exactly what we talk about, and it's exactly what we help our customers with. I think for me, the vision is really important as a starting point. In the example that you've given, it's great that we've got working solutions that we can evangelize about, but the next bit absolutely has to come on the vision. And whether that be a long-term vision, whether that be a short-term vision, it doesn't really matter. The vision can change. Don't be too constrained about it. But it really brings to mind for me the story in Alice in Wonderland with Cheshire Cat, the one where Alice says, "Well, which way do I go now?" Cat says, "Well, where do you want to go?" Alice says, "I don't really mind." The cat replies, "Well, doesn't matter which way you go there." And that's the kind of story we try and bring out with our customers of, if you don't know where you're going to go to, then you're going to struggle. And get that clear in your mind so you can build then everything else out around the ROM to succeed and give yourself the best chance of succeeding. It's around, as Jovana says, it's around collaborating between the different teams, and that doesn't matter whether the COE sits within IT or whether the COE sits within the business. You've got to work together. It's very much a hand in glove operation between IT and business. If it's only in one area, you're going to struggle without the other. It's around the cultural adoption and the communication and working with those people that are going to become your ambassadors.
Yeah.
And tell the story and the successes.
Yeah, yeah. And I think what you just said and what Jovana said sort of segues really nicely. Is this core Blue Prism belief and evangelize right from the top of the company down, which is the idea of the power of three, as I like to call it, a third model, which is essentially the idea that work in the future will be distributed evenly between systems, processes, and people. And just going back to the survey for a second, when we asked respondents if 50% of the work you undertake today was automated, which other activities would you be free to help drive? And really came out really clearly. The priorities identified were around things like spending more time talking to customers, being able to do better data analytics, maybe around compliance, and actually being better able to collaborate with colleagues. So, either Ian or Jovana, what's your take? What's your own? I think everyone's got their own understanding of that kind of 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 model. How do you see it, and how do you explain it to your customers?
And you can go first this time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing for me when we talk about a third, Jeremy, is really don't get too hung up on that ratio. It's a little bit like we talked about at the start and about the glue, and making sure though that we work together across those three areas about adding value and what it will give you. Most customers start with sort of the low-hanging fruit when it talks around automation, and that makes perfect sense. Get used to the product, get used to your delivery methodology and how you're gonna adopt it. We then move into adding those skills to that processing resource, that digital worker, and those skills around OCR, NLP, sentiment analysis, etc., and using the digital workers to orchestrate, to monitor and adapt to the change in business values, and working out how the operating model is going to work for your organization will very much depend on where you are as a starting point. I did say that ratio of a third very much sort of fits in sort of more of the long-standing financial institutions. However, if you're a new entrant, I would sort of question whether that ratio would be right. Jeremy, you haven't got that long-standing legacy systems. You shouldn't need to have that kind of ratio. But as we sort of move forward from that as well, we also talk about the evolution of the transformation program, and we talk about 3 waves. Generally, people start off with efficiency and productivity, that kind of low-hanging fruit, and then move into wave 2, which is more around business performance, and wave 3, which is more around business transformation, and where we can really talk about moving. You've heard the phrase "take the robot out the human," but really, as we start to industrialize automation, it's more about how we take the human out of the robot and really reimagining how that work is done. Less focus on how do we do it today and which parts we can automate, and more of what are we trying to do here and how can we do it with a blank sheet of paper, and let's totally reimagine our piece of work. One of the roles I did before, Jeremy, within the bank was around customer and putting the customer at the heart of what you're doing. And that's not necessarily looking at how you want to reduce cost or whether you want to increase NPS. But if you look at how customers want to engage with you and what is a seamless journey from a customer perspective, all of your other soft and hard benefits will generally fall out the bottom of that. But your focus should be on customer, not on how do we fix this bit of maybe this task around sentiment analysis on an email. And actually, do we want the email in the first place? Why are we having the email? Is it because we haven't made the journey seamless and simple for the customer, so they're having to write into it? So can we remove steps rather than necessarily how do we automate steps is to me is quite critical. And going back to the conversation we had earlier on in this podcast is, do we understand the end-to-end process, or are we siloed in the tasks that we do as part of that end-to-end process, and we miss a big opportunity?
Yeah, I was going to say, someone who spent most of their career in outsourcing and offshoring, automation was just another tool to enhance productivity, and that was, just scraping another 1% of operational efficiency, every month or so, in whether it's arbitrage or automation or technology. And so it is, I think, what you're saying, looking at it completely afresh and looking at it instead of your own ops, looking at it from the customer back and thinking about, what will serve them. And then ultimately it will be a win-win, because as your NPS stats go up, everything else tends to go up as well. Your attrition gets better, your processes get better anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Jovana, any comments on that? What's your own take?
I agree with both of you guys, obviously, and I would say it is centrally about, a customer. It is about customer centricity, as Ian said. I would argue that it's not a question of whether businesses want to have this transformation or not. They have to do it at this point. Customers right now, they don't expect just more. Their expectations change all the time, and they change quickly. And with that, we see profits shifting radically, right? So I think the change is necessary, and the change needs to be done fast, and that is painful. Change is also always painful, as we know that. But that change for both B2B and B2C businesses will fundamentally call into question how they operate, how they build skills, how they deliver customer experiences, and all of that profitably. And I think, as we said, again, it is a hard and painful journey to go through all of that. So they will have to have a new operating model that can sustain all of these new levels of speed, agility, efficiency, and kind of a day precision, right? So for that, what we were discussing in our new model that we're suggesting, I want to be very clear when we say that we want digital workforce to become a true part of every enterprise. We really don't mean a bot on every desktop. This is not what we mean. We're talking about digital workers being a foundational, structural part of every customer organization. And I think that's an important bit to understand, because then our digital workers are perfectly set to support and to work between people and systems, and to really drive that process effectiveness and to empower people to deliver innovation at the end of the day.
Inspiring words. Thank you, Jovana. Yeah, thank you. So just a couple of things before we close I wanted to speak about is, one of the many interesting things the research touches on that sort of surprised me a bit was, despite all the global uncertainty caused by the pandemic, respondents felt quite confident that the need for an increase in the size of their team was likely. So they didn't see, automation as a key lever for replacing humans. And I guess question Jovana first, Ian, do you think that automation is starting to be viewed differently than it was a few years back? Obviously, there was a bit of a fear that automation would come in. It was about taking roles. Do you think, when you speak to your customers, do you see a change in perception of that?
Yeah, so let me put it this way. I think pandemic made us all find completely new ways of doing things and performing work and really interacting with our customers and colleagues. It has also created this clear urgency. which accelerated the adoption, as we said, of new technologies. But being thrown into the deep and really having had to use these technologies right away ensured we have enough experiential evidence that can help us to remove the fear of automation in terms of job losses and really position these technologies as human enhancers. So, I mean, just think how you spend your whole 2020. I think everyone got to appreciate more efficiency and less screen time as a direct outcome of automation. If I go back in some of the examples that we gave at the beginning of our chat, you could hear that many of the COVID stories were essentially stories of disruption, of humanly impossible asks under significant time pressure. So these simply wouldn't have been possible to be completed without a digital workforce. And that is another takeaway, that digital workers are perfectly applicable to deal with these situations that require agility and flexibility and capacity to really alleviate stress from human workforce. So real life showcases like this, they're incredibly valuable, as we said, to remove that fear of automation and to educate employees on the purpose and the benefits of robotic helpers, if we want to call them like that. And again, people sometimes tend to forget that all of these stories about technology are quintessentially stories about the change, as we said before. And to drive that change at large scale, companies really need to be deliberate, that show and tell. They need to bring everyone along to the journey to ensure that bottom-up adoption. That will, down the line, ensure that they have a good foundation to democratize technology and really open the door for new skills and talent development. But all of that to happen, really, leaders need to empower their people to work in a new ways. So it's not just enough to say that they want to do it. They need to align goals and incentive. They need to give time and right tools for people to be able to operate in these new ways. So yes, from what we've been seeing on ground, I think when value is proven and the fear of change is diminishing, there is a organic demand for automation coming from all the parts of customer organization.
Thank you. And Ian, that kind of exactly as Jovana puts it, that fear of change, how do you see it with your customers?
Yeah, absolutely, Jeremy. I think Jovana again has hit straight on the point. I think just before I talk about the change around the growing of the team, I don't see it really as a growing of the team, but as an organization of how do we scale our delivery capability. And I know that might sound like a little bit of a play on words, really, Jeremy. But again, it's a plug really within the operating model, the ROM around the organization models. And when we start on this automation journey, and when a lot of companies start on that, they look at what can we do and what are the KPIs. The often used KPIs is hours back to the business. Hours back to the business is a really useful KPI as long as you do something with those hours given back. If you don't do anything with them, it's a meaningless KPI like a lot can be. And when we talk about building the team and delivery capability, I'm a huge believer in utilizing those business SMEs that you're freeing up to be used as your developers of tomorrow. And I'm not going to go down the citizen developer route specifically, because we could have a whole podcast on that, but really looking at how do we create the ability for us to scale this across the enterprise? How do we scale it with the people who do the business today in understanding how automation can help? And there's a global tech company out there that I saw a really interesting stat with the other day. They pretty much allow 20% of an employee's time to be focused on looking at solutions and potential automations. 50% of their ideas that are in production have come from that 20% of the time. But the real focus is on getting the people who do the job. They understand the problems. They're the guys that are going to help you really look at solving it. When we talk then about how we use it differently, Jeremy, as I say, if we do look at hours saved and then go, well, what do we now do with that time saved? Then that's going to create those opportunities for tomorrow that move us away from just the productivity and the efficiency, but to the other opportunities that we've got. And the survey that we had here and that we've been talking about, it was interesting. It was aimed across those 550 people, but they're predominantly in the back office. Within financial institutions, more than half the staff are actually in our front office and dealing with customers. And maybe the opportunities for tomorrow are more around how do we help our customers more and help our staff in the front office to do business easier with us. And the opportunities around, you know, personalized banking and advice around investments and credit and budgeting. Is that the sort of the opportunity of tomorrow that we'll get into?
Yeah, nice. And I guess, you know, the larger operators, they're competing against the neobanks who don't have that gigantic legacy, don't have to dedicate large amounts of time and effort into managing all that, and they can, you know, by default spend more time on you know, customer service on the front office. And so, you know, there's a need to level that playing field somewhat. Yeah. Okay. So thank you. So lastly, just a bit of fun. The World Economic Forum has reported around 65% of children today will end up in careers that don't even exist yet. And there's a growing acceptance that robotics and AI will drive the creation of jobs rather than replace them. So my question to you both is, you know, what skills would you be telling parents to teach their children today? And I know there's a story, I mean, a long time ago, just before the rise of China, everyone was busy teaching their children Japanese. And so it is quite difficult to predict what you should do. But I thought, Ian, if we could begin with you, I remember you said to me, both you and your dad spent their entire careers in financial services, but had very different careers in terms of what they did on a daily basis. And so if you could just maybe reflect on that and then give your thoughts on what those jobs of the future might look like within financial services. And then Jovana.
Yeah, sure, Jeremy. And you're right, we had that conversation. So in a way, this is nothing new, but jobs have changed. I think I saw something the other day, 85% of jobs that were around in the 1900s had become obsolete by the end of the year. So this isn't this change and the uncertainty around the future is no different. But you're right, we were talking about when I moved from retail banking into that operations space, and was particularly proud of a presentation I'd done on a change program, and I was showing my father, who retired only 8 years previously, and whilst as any parent, he made the right noises as being mildly impressed. Jeremy, he did also admit, I have absolutely no idea what you're doing here, and it has no link to what I did in my banking career. It was a totally different way of looking at things, and it was a function that he had no insight to. And as a father myself, Jeremy, when you talk about jobs and what should we be teaching our children, it is something that you worry about. I mean, firstly, you want them to be happy, and you want them to have choice. The skills that I'd like to give my kids, to me, it's focusing on things like interpersonal skills, social skills, communication, empathy, curiosity. You know, those are the kind of things that if we set or for me, if we set our children up with that, they're great at adapting to change in the vast majority of scenarios. And we need to make sure that we keep that, and we don't knock that intrinsic ability to question why we do things, because that's going to be really important in the future. Kids are great at asking that why question, and whilst it might drive us mad, and we try to remove it, we want them to keep asking why, because that is going to be to me the ability in the future to how do we augment the digital workers and the robotics and the AI with that human workforce, and the ability to manage, to coach, as Jovana has talked about, that storytelling. You know, those are going to be really, really important skills as we move into the future. And jobs, you know, jobs can change, and it's not always the direct replacement jobs that will be the jobs tomorrow. If you look at the, people will have heard the story before about the invention of the car and the motor car, and there's that worry that you've got, we're going to replace horses, so we replace stable workers and farriers, bridle saddle makers, etc. And oh, look, we're going to replace it with manufacturing. But it's not just the manufacturing jobs per se. You've also got those other linked jobs around, the design of cars, extraction and refinement of oil, road construction, and as people worked further and further away from home, you've then got the leisure and the hospitality jobs as well that are, an indirect impact on that on that future of working. And maybe it will be those jobs in the future. We do have more leisure time that we keep talking about, Jeremy, but probably yet to see. Certainly while we've been in lockdown, right? But yeah, maybe it's golf coaches that we need, and football coaches, etc. Cooking skills.
We're all for that. And Jovana, before I ask you to give some final thoughts on that, I would say that I haven't got past trying to teach my own children not to overfeed the dog, so I have low expectations. So Jovana, what are your final thoughts on that? The skills for the future for the next generation. You're an IT geek, so I'm sure you'll be going down that route.
Yeah, 100% with Ian on this one, honestly, and I'm going to geek out on this one as well. So I really think like the whole tech revolution, it really gives us a great level of fear or excitement, depending on who you ask. I personally choose to be on the optimistic side, and I believe we have very good reasons to be hopeful. As Ian said, also, like if we look in the past, we know that there are some positive and negative consequences of automation. But yeah, like factory machines put some people out of their jobs. They created many more jobs. They lowered the cost of the factory's goods. They made it more accessible to people, and so people bought more of them. So there's this kind of offsetting effect where you had some workers losing their jobs, but more jobs being created elsewhere in the economy that those people could then go and do. So where we stand right now, I kind of believe we want that kind of a good automation that actually moves the economy forward. And that kind of sophisticated automation that could actually create a dynamic, new jobs that these displaced people can then go into. I think another important lesson from history is around challenges as well, right? If you look at the research of these past technological shifts, what really sticks out is how difficult they were for the people at the time. And so I think, yes, it's important to look at what happens in the long run, in the aggregate for what the technology can bring to us. But it's also important to be mindful and listen and plan smartly for more immediate actions. So comes to mind, in this case, are thoughtfully planned programs for like reskilling and upskilling. And I think we're going to see more of that in the coming years. In terms of what we've been seeing on ground, in all honesty, we've seen very little direct impact in terms of jobs reduction across our customer base. What happens in majority of these scenarios is that people just get empowered to take on more rewarding and really mentally more stimulating jobs. And that, as we said before, just decrease this like customer facing activities, collaboration, brings on process improvements, and it really uncovers problems that can then create new revenue opportunities. But automation itself is also a direct driver of new jobs, right? There's a set of brand new roles that are created within automation unit, from process analysts to designers to developers over to support managers. So as we said, we always advise our customers to embrace their own people, their insiders, to fill in for these roles. And when you do that, you want tech-savvy leaders, you want system thinkers, change makers who are well-versed with your business, but also understand how your organization lives and breathes. So this development of internal talent is really important for the future of the workforce. And then on a broader scale, as Ian said, I can see lots of new roles just being created on the back of automation and AI adoption. And yes, for sure, we will need more engineers and designers of all kinds, but also more and more roles that are actually just about being more human. And that really requires just increased level of empathy and inner social skills. I think we will see less of parents sending their kids to coding boot camps, and probably a bit more of them choosing, I don't know, arts and humanities, where kids can learn to dance and play and be creative and express themselves. And that just makes a lot of sense when we know that skills that are going to be valuable in future are those softer human skills. So yeah, it's all about empathy. And I think a lot of jobs of the future will just involve relating to other.
Thank you. That's an incredibly upbeat way to finish, and the idea of, you know, the people having skills across the piece. I know when I left university with an English degree, my father was very sure I'd never get a job in my life. So I've thankfully managed to prove him wrong. So we're out of time, but, you know, thank you very much indeed for tuning in, and special thanks to Jovana and Ian. Be sure and download copies of our executive series based on the research. The survey series is called The Power of Three. But thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks for tuning in to Transform Now. For more insightful discussions on digital transformation and more, check out our podcast channel where you'll find all of our previous episodes. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And if you like what you heard, please leave us a review. For more information about digital transformation and the future of work, check out blueprism.com to learn how Blue Prism's digital workforce is enabling enterprise transformation now.